Welcome back to the Highly Optimized Podcast, the show where we explore what it means to live in full alignment, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Now, today's episode is a journey, ladies and gents, a raw, unfiltered soul-level transmission about what it really looks like to walk away from the default path and choose something different. My guest today is someone who cracked the code early, someone who looked around, saw the way most people were living and said, nah, that ain't for me. And in this conversation, we dive into what that moment of realization looked like, the inner and outer signs that you might be one of those people as well, and how to begin creating a life that's built on truth rather than obligation. We talk about sovereignty, we talk about crypto, and we talk about spiritual evolution. And we tell the truth about what it actually takes to live this way, the freedom and also the friction. So if you've ever felt like you were born for something more, this is your episode. So let's get into it with my brother, Amethyst Flame. Amethyst Flame, my brother in commerce and so many other things. I'm so excited to have you here. You know, as I said in the intro to all you guys tuning in, Amethyst and I connected last night for a quick little hangout sesh through the interwebs. And we were chatting about a lot of topics. And I was like, you know what? We need to do a podcast about a lot of this stuff because I've had you on this one time on psychedelics. We've talked a lot about decentralization. We've talked about cryptocurrencies before. We talked about a lot of these things that maybe we'll touch on today. But, you know, what I wanted to get clearer on this show specifically first was more of your journey, because I feel a lot of people that are tuning into the show, and also what, like I was telling you last night, the direction I'm really looking to take the show more and more in these days is I am aware that a lot of the people that listen to this show are also people just like you and I. They have woken up in the dream. They are realizing that a lot of things that they're doing don't really make sense. And they're realizing that the typical path that society gives them, whether or not you want to look at going to college, whether or not you want to look at getting a job for 50 years and retiring and that whole silly shit, regardless of what you want to look at, these people are not comfortable with that. And neither are I or you. And so at the end of the day, I think that it really helps to hear other people's journeys that have taken a different path in life, because it is completely unknown. You know, the false safety of the typical paths in society is that they're already paved. You know, you can go to school, you can get a certain degree and say law or doctor or psychologist or whatever. And the false safety is you'll have a job and life will kind of just be simple. But that's not actually how that works out, right? Like what typically happens is that people realize they've been pushed into a box that doesn't fit their size of their soul. And that then leads to midlife crises and all these things. And at the end of the day, you know, maybe there are some people that are meant to do that. Great. But I don't think they're probably listening to this show. And so it would be a disservice if we didn't talk about, you know, how you actually found your way into cryptocurrency, decentralization, sovereignty, and a lot of the other stuff too, because you've had many different lives in getting to this place now. So I'm super excited to dive in, but I would love to ask you, you know, if you could share a little bit more about your journey, you know, starting from when you realized that things maybe weren't as they were told to you, and then the process you undertook, the challenges you went through, maybe some of the big moments of like mindset shifts, things like that, just kind of whatever comes through when it comes to how does someone pave their own path in life and what does it actually look like and what are some of the challenges that could arise. But by challenges, I also mean opportunities in disguise. So take it away, my man.
Thank you, bro. What an amazing intro. Yeah, our tap in last night was potent. And just sharing a lot of flowers and respect for my bro Ryan here and what he does, how he shows up and creating these spaces and these platforms for people to connect and to share these kinds of experiences and insights and gems and wisdom. And, you know, part of decentralization is, for me at least, is reconnecting to the village template. And in order to do that, it requires being real and authentic with each other and having connections and connectors, people like Ryan. Like we all get in where we fit in this holy shift. And this holy shift, to me, the easiest way to put it is it's divine remembrance, remember who we truly are, divine appointment, step forward in your mission, and then divine order, which is it's all already done. And those first two things are transitional and impermanent by nature. They're permanent in the way that they're here right now, but they're impermanent that we're all moving through it on our own. So that's kind of where I am now, looking back on my journey, what I see as the template. And I'm happy to share, and please jump in and prompt me in anything. Just saying, like, in real life, we know each other, we've shared space, we've been in community, and I've seen it grow in our individual spaces, our collective spaces, and not just in the people that we know or that we introduce to each other, but in the ways that we co-create and walk this way. And I say that, right? Walk this way, because I like to think of it as like a way shower, right? I'm not creating the way. The way is already there. It's the Tao, it's the Dharma, it's the will of God. I'm just finding my way in it. And as I walk it, I show myself where I'm going. Creator shows me where I'm going. And then in my embodiment, I can show others. Ryan in his embodiment can show others. So it's very, there's something about like reducing importance, like not making things too important, right? But I will say, I feel that it's an integral part to being here on Earth now, is to realize that when a door opens, usually not just one door opens. There's multiple doors that open. And there's a really great Radiohead song. I think it's called like Push, Pull, Revolving Doors. And there's a line in there and they go, there's some doors that you can't come back from. Now, I don't know if that's fully accurate, but I will say that there are doors that when you go into them, they can lead into a loop or a down cycle. And in my experience on Earth, there's pretty much 3 areas of existence. You're either looping, which, or you're present in the flow, or you're upcycling, or you're downcycling. So when you look at these doors opening, you got, those are your kind of options there. And so, walking the way and showing the way and acknowledging that if you're out here and you're on the leading edge, just like any space of being a pioneer, there's going to be things that go sideways. There's going to be things that don't make it. Parts of self that don't make it, parts of reality that don't make it, relationships with others that don't make it. And really, it's like, I feel a big part of the medicine now is allowing the radical acceptance of grief for what you thought life was supposed to be here, for what you thought family was supposed to be here, for what you thought reality was supposed to be here, for what you thought a job, a career, a calling was supposed to be here, and accepting that there is one unifying divine intelligence that has already put everything together, and we do have free will, and we get to walk that way with free will, and also the hubris of the human to think that they can fully grasp the plan of the divine. So where did that start for me? It started when I was very young. I was probably around 8, maybe even younger, when I was like, this isn't how we're supposed to live. I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church, and, I read the Bible. I went to CCD and I saw what they were doing. I go, this is not what it says. This is not the teachings of Christ. This is actually a lot of what he's saying not to do. So that really planted a seed for me that, wow, what's up with these places that people put all their faith in as authority, and they're not actually living according to the principles that they profess. And so that started there. I've shared on another one that we've done, but, I got very much into the punk rock scene around 15 or 16. And I remember leading up to that, I always just wanted to be in nature as much as possible. And I would always just imagine what it was like without the apartment buildings, or without the houses, or without the roads, and felt like that was something that I was yearning for. Like, hey, I want to go back to this version of life. And then when I got into punk rock, then all the knowledge and wisdom came around of what corporations own everything. What are they doing to test their products on animals? Where is all the money? Where are they oppressing people? What's actually happening? And so I really feel a key of it is just like, are you able to see the world for what it is, not what it's presented as? And if you're able to see the world for what it is, that means you have critical thinking. And if you have critical thinking, it means you have access to your mind, and that your mind isn't stuck in loops or templates or programs imprinted by society, by culture, by religion. And so along the way up to this point, the challenges were, firstly, there was very limited internet. It was the days of AOL, and then it became the days of bulletin board, but there was no social media. There was no real way to connect like there is now. We couldn't do this. We would actually have to go to each other. And TV shows were limited too. I don't think the X-Files came out until like the early 90s. So it was unsolved mysteries you could watch, or you could go to the library. And I remember in the library at the time, they would have these series of books from like Time Magazine or someone. It would be like UFOs, like ghosts, like, but there wasn't, yes, there were plenty of people doing the work, the research, putting things out, but it was nowhere near the tipping point that we've reached where it's everywhere. You can easily find a group to go summon spaceships. If that's your ticket, not my ticket, but some people are on that ticket. You know, they want to call someone in and jump off the planet. But so it wasn't as available. So finding community. And I feel that was a big piece for me was, what's it mean to be in community? What's it mean to build community? And that's something that the punk rock scene provided, because I could go anywhere on the East Coast and have a place to stay at 16 years old, play a show, be a part of a show, have people. Also, in my own experience, I wanted to destroy the system, which, you know, you destroy something, you're really just destroying a part of yourself. And how can one 16-year-old punk rocker or 100 of them take down the whole system? So for me, I'm not going to say for everybody, I did see it happen, but there are still people I know that are in that scene and doing great. For me, it turned into more of self-destruction. And it was in that era that hip hop was also very present in my life. So that was in the late 90s, golden age. I was close to New York, going to New York for punk rock and being around hip hop, and started freestyling around that time. And that was another huge piece, freestyling, improvisation. And, you know, when meditation is a great thing to practice, mindfulness is a great thing to practice. And if it's only being practiced at certain times in the day, it's not a lifestyle shift. It's the goal is for it to be your every moment. And that's where I found with the improvisation was life is a walking, waking meditation. And it's also a walking, waking freestyle. Because when you're really in the space of being present, cues come through. And it could totally change the entire game plan that you put together of your life, being a lawyer or being a doctor, your launch, you know, your relationships, whatever it is, all that can come through and shift things up. So, you know, I'm going to speak broadly about my journey, not go too in depth, but I'll say that the key pieces was, you know, seeing things for what they are and becoming in a space of improv. And from that, all these other things unfolded, finding my way into decentralization, Web3 and crypto in 2017, you know, continuing to make music and perform and taking breaks and coming back to it. I'm also a conscious MC, conscious rapper. And that was another huge part of the journey. And again, it went with the improv, the freestyle. So I really feel like there's a lot of pieces that come along with being able to, in the moment, pivot. And not pivot because you're unsure of what's happening, but pivot because you're sure that the cue, the sign, the insight that you just got is actually more aligned than what your mind thought. And for me, the way to get to that point is, you know, and Ryan's really great at this. I've worked with him in his containers. Phenomenal coach, hands down.
Thanks,
Highly
man.
recommend him to anybody and everybody. Most people listening are probably already familiar and hopefully have worked with him. But as somebody who's overcome a lot of mindset stuff, Ryan is definitely super dialed in. And there's something that I remember him sharing. You know, how does it feel in your heart? How does it feel in your body? So when it comes back to that point of a cue comes in or an insight, does it feel good? Or are you feeling nervous about it? Are you feeling anxiety about it? If you're feeling anxiety about it, then is that an insight or is that an intrusive thought? Because there's definitely a difference there. One is divine and one is a distraction. All is divine, but one is a distraction that's going to take you a little while more to loop around until you upcycle. And so, having those areas of discernment, and that's where I really feel we are right now, is we're in a collective initiation of discernment. And so kind of the last thing I'll speak about my story with that is, what does it mean to choose to walk a path that's aligned with your mission in a world where the majority of people don't do that? That means that you have to have the willingness, the commitment, and the conviction to feel sadness for the people that you love, the parts of yourself that you love that aren't available to step forward in their mission for whatever reason, free of judgment. Everybody and everything is on its own timeline, and things move according to the pace of what's present in that vessel's experience, right? Because it's all just vessels of the energy of creation. Whether that vessel's aware of it or not, the energy of creation is still flowing through that vessel. I don't care. People call it NPCs, people, whatever they want to call them, the structure still contains the energy of creator. And so a piece for that is finding the space in the heart to allow the mind to run all the stories about what it means to not have those kinds of relations with self or with others, and in the heart to have radical acceptance in a loving, non-judgmental way of where you are and where everyone else is, and just be willing to walk forward in that truth.
Dude, absolutely epic, bro. And I totally agree. This is one of the reasons you're one of my besties in the world, because you always get me so fired up. And I took a bunch of notes, but that last thing you said there, right? Like, one thing that I've been really focused on in my own world and my own depiction of reality is the fact that all I'm seeing out there are images related to my own unconscious. And specifically, if I'm getting triggered or I'm seeing things that part of me doesn't like, or part of me gets frustrated out of whatever it is, that I don't want to for a second anymore think that that person, place, or thing out there is actually real. And by real, I don't mean it's fake. I just mean that even I, this main character of Ryan, or you, the main character of Amethyst, is not actually real. There's an illusion or a dream in which we're real. And the point of the dream is to have the most fun in the dream you possibly can, to wake up in the dream, to help others wake up. Like, it's beautiful and positive, guys. All right. I'm not going down dark alleys here. But at the same time, what is the distraction? Because you brought up a really good point. Divinity versus distraction. Or how I look at it, simplicity versus complexity, or God versus ego. To me, all these things are synonymous. So am I going to get tricked by my own ego that has manifested this illusion because the ego thinks that God doesn't like it? So it's created this world where it feels it can run from God, but the only way to get back to God is to wake up and actually forgive yourself for ever even thinking that God would not like you because you're here now, right? It's the prodigal son story, straight up. That's like the most accurate depiction of what I believe, anyway, is really going on here. And so, again, divinity versus distraction. When I was going to say turn on the news, but I've never done that in my life, actually. But let's say if I open up Facebook, right? Because that's kind of like the new age news these days, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And I see, specifically, actually, this is one thing I see a lot. I see content creators making content, okay? They're making content around whatever their niche is, whatever they want to do. And there'll always be someone in the comments, it's like, how dare you not support Israel, or just something like completely out of left fucking, field. And, again, there's a part of me that's just like, ugh, when I hear that stuff, right? But also, that's the ego wanting me to think that's somehow separate from me, like that's not relevant to me at all. But if I feel any kind of reaction whatsoever, there's something there for me. So I can either just allow the ego to run my life, right? I can allow the distraction to run my life and think that this person over there is annoying because, like, how dare they throw this on someone's content? It's just weird, And at the same time, that reality exists. But the other reality is, why do I feel this reaction when I see that? And that's a lot more challenging, I feel, for most of us, definitely myself anyway, to ask oneself. But it's the only way. It's the only thing that really matters here. Because if you keep seeing the external world as if it's operating independently from your inner world, then you're mistaking one of the core laws of the universe, which is as within, so without. You only see without, right? You only see in the external what you're projecting from the internal. And so for me, if I see someone do that, can I see the part of me that's scared? Can I see the part of me that wants to be a part of a bigger mission, but doesn't really know how to do it yet? So in place of doing that or knowing that, they're doing this. They're online. They're trying to spread a message, even if it's not one that I agree with or I'm passionate around. Can I see that part of me that wants to feel like it's got something big going on in life, that wants to feel like it's making a difference? And if I can have compassion for not just that person out there that doesn't really exist, right? But the aspect of me that I'm seeing projected. And when I say doesn't exist, it's not meant to mean like an NPC or something like that. It's meant to mean that we're all one being here. All right. We're all not real. Okay. But we're also all real in this dream illusion. And so it's quite the paradox if you really think about it. And that's one of the things that actually makes me laugh about life. And I think that's one of the things that really I've always loved about psychedelics, is that they really just show you how paradoxical the entire aspect of life is. But I took some notes on what you were saying. First of all, when you were talking about the flow, right, and being able to pivot and these kind of things, I think of that, and this is why I name one of my core values this, being a big wave surfer. Because a big wave surfer, they don't really feel alive unless they're surfing a big wave. And I think something I've noticed between everyone that is going to live their life in a similar fashion to you and I, like pave their own path. It can look very different, but just do something that not a lot of people do. They have to enjoy intensity to a certain degree. You know, they have to be that person that likes getting out the waves, likes getting a little nervous sometimes, right? Like there's something in them. Like they're not reckless with what they do. They don't get out there their first time ever and try to surf a 100-foot wave, but they're always pushing the envelope a little bit. They're always asking themselves, like, what else can I do? What else can I do? And they make it a fun game for themselves. And when they fall, not if they fall, but when they fall, when something doesn't work out, whatever, can they be like, okay, get up, brush it off, learn from the experience? Like, hey, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't surf that way this time. Or, you know, I was too close to the coral, or whatever the analogy is here. If they can realize those things and get back out there and learn from past experiences and not allow it to make them jaded and not allow the ego to beat them down in thinking that because something didn't work out, they're a failure now, right? One of the most popular stories of the ego to tell, to keep people right where they're stuck. But again, like when you were saying that, it really made me think of that idea because, you know, the entrepreneurial mind is pretty wild, you know, like to want to try to find different ways to do things. It's not easier. It's actually not easier. I think that what it does is it's more soulful. It's more like it's going to give you more fulfillment. It's going to give you more joy. But also, just like a sword has to be shaped in a really hot fire, that's really what happens when you choose to go down a path that's in alignment with your soul and doesn't exactly line up with logic all the way. Like, for instance, what we're doing, okay? Like, what you do now makes a little more sense to more people getting into crypto. But back when you got into it, it wasn't what it was now. It was still looked at as this weird thing that only drug dealers used or whatever. And when I started teaching conscious cannabis, no one fucking knew what it was. I didn't even really know what it was. I just knew it was coming through me. And so, like, again, that's the thing, is I believed that it was going to lead me somewhere, but I had no fucking clue where it was going to lead me. And I think that's the juxtaposition that one has to feel comfortable with, or one learns how to feel comfortable with through self-development modalities, meditation, breathwork, whatever. Because again, everything is a spiritual journey here. So if I'm getting uncomfortable paving my own path, cool. Where do I not feel safe in myself? Where do I not trust myself? Where don't I have faith in the process of life? You know, these are all the harder things, or the more challenging things for someone to actually give space for. But again, at the end of the day, what I really feel like we're here for is soul evolution, to wake up within the dream, to continue showing ourselves over and over that we are safe even when weird things happen in this dream illusion. And then the other thing that you mentioned too was CCD. I've never heard anyone else mention CCD, dude. I swear I thought this was just a Boston thing. You know, it's really funny for everyone listening. I don't believe this now. I wouldn't put this kind of disdain on any religion. It just is what it is. But when we were kids, we used to say that it stood for Central City Dump, you know. And I don't even know really what it stood for because I never went to it. My mom asked me once and I was like, nah. And she's like, all right. Do you know what it actually stands for people listening?
I have no idea. I have
It's
no
something
clue.
like Christian department or something. It's something to do with Christianity. It's basically like, for anyone listening, because I don't know if this is a all over the world thing. Well, probably definitely not all over the world, but I don't know if this is all over America or just certain pockets. Maybe I'm just mansplaining here, but but it was basically like an aftercare program for, I think, the Catholic Church. I'm pretty sure, because it was one up the street from my house, St. Jerome. And I remember like my friends that would go would just get so frustrated at the nuns because they were so old school and whatnot. So grateful I never had to go. But one of the things that you were talking about too is that how when you witnessed religion going into those things, you didn't feel like God was there. And of course, God wouldn't be there, because you know why? You know, if you check out things like A Course in Miracles and Disappearance of the Universe, they open up the idea that God didn't build this universe. So therefore, nothing in the universe is going to get you home except remembering that the universe actually isn't real. Like, that's the paradox, right? So a lot of these people go to church every Sunday. They follow these commandments. They read the Bible or the Torah or insert sacred text here, not realizing that really what they're reading is an amalgamation of a little bit of someone like a Jesus or whatever the deity is in that religion, sprinkled in with a bunch of mortal men and women who practice duality from a place of thinking they were practicing something like non-duality. You know, someone like a Jesus or Buddha would never create a religion, because a religion isn't necessary to wake up in the dream. Forgiveness is. So at the end of the day, you know, it's just funny when people credit these things to Jesus or credit them to Buddha. You know, one of the things I hear often from Buddhists is, oh, intoxicants, they're not good. I'm like, oh, really? So you think Buddha wasn't enlightened and wasn't a non-dualist? He would never have made the dream real by creating condition, which is good, bad, duality, etc. You know, it's very interesting. And so that's something I see a lot between people like you and I, people who listen to the show, is we might not, I mean, again, I don't profess to know any of these things. I just know what I know for myself subjectively. And I know what other people I resonate with happen to believe, or a certain air of what they believe. But at the end of the day, it's just interesting because I find a lot of people that get onto this type of path, they question everything, right? They're really good at questioning things. They're really good at not going with the status quo. And you mentioned a couple of different, movies that were coming out and different books and places you were reading, like conspiracy theories and whatnot. And for me, it was Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist is what opened me up. I remember smoking a joint in my bedroom at my mom's house when I was like 17 with a friend, and we watched Zeitgeist, and I was like, holy shit. And, you know, of course, being a 17-year-old, I wanted to stomp around and tell everyone what I knew. You know, anytime someone mentioned God, I'm like, you know, they're just talking about the planets, right? You know, and I was so egotistical about it. But, you know, again, it was like I knew that things weren't as they seemed. I just didn't know what they were. And later on in life, I've realized that the point is not needing to know anything. That's another ego trap, to get you to think that things are actually real enough that you could know them and that you should know them. And so it's very interesting, man. I got some other stuff written down, but I want to give you a second to talk. But it's absolutely hilarious, man, just how many things in our journeys line up, even though they were very different in terms of the actual like event. The kind of like theme behind it or value behind it or mindset behind it was very similar. So just hilarious, man.
Yeah, I mean, that part right there. First, I just want to say I love having these kinds of conversations. And,
Yeah, dude,
creating
my
these
favorite.
spaces to have these is just so potent. This is, Ryan and I could talk like this a lot. So it's life that leads us in the ways that we go. And, that's one thing I've felt into, and I'd say learned a lot, is that the nature of relations of walking in your mission is not always about being in close contact all the time. It's about we're all where we are meant to be on the earth grid in our journey, and then doing our thing and then coming back together in the right point where you just pick up like it was yesterday, or even if it was a year ago. It's, hey, a lot has happened in between, but more than likely we're probably in the same themes within our journey. And that's what I've noticed. And that's what you're speaking on, is that as you move up, right? Whatever. As you move along in your journey, and depending on the path you take, it puts you in a specific frequency. And when you're in that frequency and others are in that frequency, there are certain themes that happen within each season, within each cycle. And the themes right now, definitely, Ryan was mentioning about, seeing everybody as a version of self reflected. And also, if there is a trigger point, what part of me, or the story of me, or the information stored in the water of me, or the information stored in the water from my bloodline is telling me what is informing me of something that is unhealed, right? Unhealed, unresolved, whatever term we want to use without getting into the whole infinite healing loop. Because I mean, that's real too, right? There's
that's
an
a thirst
infinite
trap
healing
too.
loop.
Yep.
Yeah. So, being able to acknowledge that, hey, not my fault, but it is my responsibility. It's not their fault, but it is my responsibility how I relate to them. And them can be an individual, a collective, an organization, a fraudulent entity. And in that, creating that space to actually, early on for me, it was always like, well, what happened? What happened in that lifetime? Or what happened when I was younger? And now the way I approach it is more like, okay, if that is helpful for me, I'm open to learning it. Otherwise, I'm okay just feeling this emotion, creating space for that part of myself to come home. And if I did project and did react emotionally, then I'm going to take accountability with myself. I'm going to take accountability with the other person. And if the other person is able to match in that energy, great, let's move forward and come to a space of repair and resolve. If the other person is not, because they're still in that wound, then with love, I love you from over here, and let's come back together when we can both be in that space. And I've had that said to me. You know what I'm saying? It took me sometimes years to be like, oh, wow, dang, that was me.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a big part. And then I want to link that into something else you're talking about with big wave surfing and intensity. And, you mentioned failure being the story of the ego. And yeah, I mean, what's the acronym? First attempt in learning. Even if you have 10,000 fails, each one is your first attempt in learning because you learned something new. And then you get to take your next attempt, which is then your first attempt after learning from the previous attempt. So, fun little things to reframe and work around. And I feel that what you said about intensity is absolutely accurate, because taking that radical responsibility and accountability for oneself and then radical acceptance of another can be very intense. It can be looking in the mirror at a very dark piece of yourself that has been carried in the bloodline by multiple generations that none of them were willing to look at. So instead they went crazy. They drank themselves. Whatever the being chooses here on earth. There's plenty of ways to suppress and distract, right? Whether it's work or substances or sex or any of them, right? So, at that point are you able to deal with that intensity? Because it's going to come with it. And the intensity of feeling those emotions of those traumas stored within the cellular memory of the body. And that, to me, look, we can change the world, maybe. Yeah, actually we can, right? It's proven that a small group of people coming together with a shared mindset and vision and resources can change things quickly and dramatically. For proof of that, read, what was the Creature of Jekyll Island? Or there's Ali Zatari on Instagram, does like little breakdowns of them. But, a few people came together to create the Fed. And that changed the course of money in the entire world. So people can come together and change things. And, the intensity of being able to hold that frequency of what does it feel when the trauma comes up? And then what does it mean for everything to die? Because when you do make that big paradigm shift individually or collectively, I've heard it called the dark night of the soul, more like the dark night of the ego and the remembrance of the soul.
Yeah.
But that's a very intense experience to be in also. So I love that analogy of big wave surfing, because the thing is, none of us get out of here alive on Earth. Right now in this template, is there immortality and all that? Yeah, there's definitely, I feel that program is in the genetics. It's been written about, it's been spoken about, and there are living beings that are immortal right now. I highly recommend Illuminati Congo's book about immortality. I forget the title right now. But he brings up tardigrades, trees, things that live for thousands of years or indefinitely. So physical immortality is real. That's another tangent. And
No,
in
dude,
that,
I agree.
yeah. And so in that way, it's just, but things in order, okay, so let's use that as an example. In order for that to become reality, it has to become a belief. In order for that to become a belief individually and collectively, all the beliefs around why that's not possible have to die. And that is an intense experience because that requires looking at things from a completely different lens than you were before you became that version of yourself. And so that's where we get into the layering of this reality. And, the paradoxical nature of it is what I found is to really be able to be truly in an expansive space of unconditional love in the heart. It requires the breaking and the grieving of the heart for the things that are actually not real, that we've been told are real over and over and over again for millennia upon millennia, and that this is a dream. The principles of reality, awareness is what runs it all. And so when we put our awareness in a place with attention and intention, that's where the energy flows that is neither created nor destroyed. And once we get to those principles, I'll say that it doesn't always become easier. It just becomes a bit more familiar to go through these cycles. And that's what they are. They're seasons and cycles of this remembrance of, whoa, that isn't real. Oh, this is all dying. This is intense. This is uncomfortable. Expansion. Yeah.
Dude, it's so interesting, man, because it is completely cyclical and also paradoxical. And that's like one of the things I keep coming back to is that, yes, like if you want a new reality, it's not that like there's actually I was talking about this on Breathe with Cannabis the other day when we did flow state mastery. It's more like this, right? Like I grew up thinking that if I wanted a new reality, or I wouldn't have even thought about it in those terms, if I wanted a better experience of life, if I wanted to be happier, if I wanted to feel more attractive, if I wanted to make more money, whatever those things are, that I would have to add things to my life, right? I'd have to go to school and get a degree. I'd have to buy a new car so I was happy, right? Like any of these kind of things that are very 3D. A lot of us can see through it now. But again, I wasn't always like that. I didn't see through all this when I was 14, 15, and I was around my parents and they were existing in this world and whatever. And so, again, then you go to school. And every year there's new information you got to cram into your head. More, right? You get into, say, bodybuilding, more food you got to eat to get bigger and add more muscle. Like everything is about addition. And so most of us are very comfortable and feel very safe in adding things to our life. But actually, the more we add to our lives, the less presence we're probably going to have because the more like spread thing we're going to be. But yet most of us, including myself, are more comfortable doing that to myself, right? So one of the things that had to die just over the last couple of years is the belief that more was better. And I know it might sound silly, right? Because if I say logically more is better, I knew that was bullshit for years. But knowing something logically and embodying it in the physical are two totally different things. And so I had to fully play that loop out that my dad played out, my grandfather played out, probably people before them played out on my father's side and also my mother's side too. My mom, still will glorify the fact that she worked 4 jobs and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, I'm thinking like, dude, that just wasn't a good bet. Like if you had to have 4 jobs to pay for your life, you might want to look into like what other things could pay more money, right? Like that's where I think about it. But I can tell based on who I was in the past, why she feels good about that, right? Because she was brought up in a time where more was better. And that was kind of like, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, like that was what everyone was trying to do. Is do more, right? So I'm aware of the fact that I was also in that. But now that I've healed that and I've had experiences on the contrary of that, where the more billionaires and millionaires you talk to that are actually happy, they like their whole currency is time. They don't even care about money anymore because they have so much of it. It's managed well, blah, blah, blah. They're all about getting their time back. And so I saw that. I'm like, okay, so once you get to this level, all you want is time back. Okay, that's interesting, right? So the process of subtraction you're talking about like in noticing that if I want to, let's say, run a business myself, I'm going to start seeing my shadow probably a lot quicker than if I was working for someone else, because it brings up like, my manhood, like how well am I as a leader, which you don't really feel when you're working in a cubicle, right? And someone's giving you what to do every day. You don't really feel that. It's going to make me very resilient, very strategic. And if I don't feel I can do those things, that's another shadow popping up. And these are all things I've gone through. And so it's almost like an extremely fast catalyzer for spiritual evolution, doing something different than most people are doing, because there is no plan and you're going to be responsible for every aspect of how this thing either works or doesn't work. And so a lot can get brought up in there. And what I've realized is the less I do, the more I be, right? The less I actually try to do anything in the external world. And the more I just tune into my inner world and I look at my reactions, I look at how I'm feeling about things. And to be honest, it's that's the biggest challenge for me. It's far easier to be like, oh, let me just learn a new marketing strategy or get into another course or whatever. What's harder for me is to sit there and actually like feel these things. But if we don't feel them, we won't heal them. And one of the things that you and I were talking about yesterday that I'd love to dive into a little bit is some of the things that people may not be aware of will happen when they enter a path like this and they do something different. Because for me, here's how it went. The first 3 years of me doing this was a combination of first not knowing what the hell I was doing, but believing that it would all work out, which was true. It has. But at the same time, like I literally had no logical idea what I was doing. I was just fucking around finding out, and I was having a shit ton of stuff pop up and having to go through healing and all that kind of stuff. And again, I will say there, I didn't go look for this healing. I waited for it to come up naturally. And I think that's the big challenge we see with the infinite healing loop. People are like, let me go do more ayahuasca and look for what healing I have. And it's like, that's not, I mean, again, I'm not going to say it's wrong. I don't know if it's wrong, but it's never worked out that way for me. And all it does is just keep telling myself, I'm unhealed. When I'm healed, I can. When I'm healed, I'll do this. It's just silly for me. Like, I'd rather just go through life. And when I start getting fucked up at a certain point, be like, what's going on here? Then focus on the healing when it comes up naturally. But, again, like one of the things that I noticed was over the first couple of years, I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew my heart was in it, which is the most important part. But I didn't know how to run Instagram. I didn't know how to make good content. I didn't know how to do podcasts. I didn't know all this stuff. I was a nobody. So, again, I had friends throughout my life and whatnot, but I had never had a lot of eyes on me, put it that way. And so then a couple of years later, I start getting on some bigger shows. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I get on Paul Check. He connects me to Aubrey. And when I went on Aubrey, it was wild, dude, because the biggest thing that came out of me was that I didn't see my own value. So I wrongly assumed at that point that I should allow everyone to have access to me. So my main call to action was book a free hour-long sales call with me, right? That was inefficient. And then also, one of the things I had learned was make sure you get back to all your DMs. Make sure you got to be the one doing it. You got to be the one doing this. And what ended up happening was I had a great opportunity in disguise where I realized that I let a lot of energy into my life that really wasn't the energy that was right for me. I let a lot of people into my life that were tire kickers. One of the many reasons I love you so much and, you love me so much and we get along so well is because we are who we fucking say we are. And if we're going to do something, we're going to fucking do it. All right. Like, for instance, if I find a program that I want to do, I already know I want to do it before I even hop on the sales call. And I'm not going to answer like, yes, I have the finances for this, just to be like, oh, no, sorry, I don't. Like, if I don't feel the program's right for me in doing the sales call after I do it, like maybe I thought it was right and then I don't feel it, I'm just going to say, hey, I don't feel this is right for me right now. I'm looking for this and it sounds like this is more this, right? And so I'm going to be as honest as I can. And I was fucking shocked, man, at how many people would literally answer my form, yes, I have at least $1,000 to pay for this, because I started getting frustrated because it was just so many people showing up like, oh, what, this is going to cost money? And I'm like, do you not get what this is? Do you think I got in the Paul Check's podcast not paying him any money? Do you think I got in the world of Aubrey Marcus not knowing how to give value? It's like, guys, I want you to hear this. And for those of you listening to this right now, this is going to be very important because maybe some of you guys already get this. Maybe some of you don't. You're not going to get anywhere expecting something for nothing. Okay. I signed up for HLC1. I went and put myself in Paul Sheck's world. I introduced myself to him. And then I did it again at Zen in the Garden. And I did it again at Shamanic Sound Healing. And I did it again at the Mandala Workshop. And I did not let him forget who I was. And that's what you have to do. And so it bums me out, and it bummed me out hard to see all these people that would answer, I'm so ready for transformation. And then we go over it and they're like, can I talk to my partner about it? I'm like, what? Don't you have sovereignty? Like, I don't like, you were fine filling out the form. You didn't already talk to him. Like, you know, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to talk to Rachel about it right away. So I'm curious for you, what I'm getting at here is, has that played a role in your life too, with having to get really good at boundaries very quickly? Because that was not something I was even aware of or something that I was that good at naturally. And so I got brought through the fucking flames, dude, when that happened. And I'm grateful for the experience. But again, for anyone listening who's looking to pave your own path, already paving it, when you get your first big break, there's going to be people that crawl out of the fucking woodwork that all say they're going to promise you they want all these things. They're going to do all this. They're going to hop in the program with you. Oh my God, you changed their life. And then they're just going to tire kick you. And that's just, it's okay. It doesn't make them bad people, but it means that you have to get to be aware of this now, like I am. And now I'm aware of it. So when people reach out to me on Instagram and they say, Ryan, oh my God, it changed my life, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, cool. Here's the payment link. Let me know when you book. I don't hear from them anymore. I don't hop on a call with them anymore because I know. I'm like, I'm looking for people like me. I'm looking for people that are self-aware enough to know by listening to something if it's right for them. I shouldn't need to do an hour-long sales call with someone to help them work through their own mental challenges. Like, that's not the level I'm looking to work with. I'm looking to work with the people that are like, hey, this is the result I want. This is the result you provide. Cool. All right. I either believe you or don't. And if I believe you, I'm going to get in. If I don't, whatever. And that's the kind of people I'm looking for. So has that been, how much of a role, if it's played a role, has that played in your life and your evolution of getting more out there, having more eyes on you, things like that?
Oh man, I mean, it's a huge piece of it all. And yeah, you know, thanks for your authenticity and your journey. And, you know, I just want to call attention to one thing. There's a bunch, go back and listen to that again, everybody, for anybody who wants to walk in their way, because one of the main themes is persistence and trust and faith. If I stay doing this, no matter how long it takes, at some point, I'm going to find the way, or the way will be presented to me of how to step forward. It's in the beginning of Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have read it. If you haven't, highly recommend reading it. They talk about the guy who goes and gets a job with Thomas Edison, and he's a nobody from nowhere. And he's like, I am going to become business partners with Thomas Edison. And so he gets money up, he goes there, he takes a crappy job, and he works his butt off. And he always has this vision. He's telling Edison, I'm going to be your business partner. What Ryan said is getting people to remember you. Now, the thing is, once you get up into these higher levels, it's a different perspective to have of that person's experience from a level that you're at that isn't holding the same bandwidth as them. And then once people get up to those bandwidths, they see that really it becomes very limited how much energy they're able to share with everybody. If somebody on a huge podcast level, they can't answer every DM. They can't talk to everybody. And people's perception of watching someone go from here to up there is, oh, I always have access to them. And that's not the case. It's an energy exchange. Everything in this space is an energy exchange. By nature, the 3D realm is entropic. Life force comes into it, and physical matter feeds on it and feeds on itself and then decomposes. So there's an energy, and is that it's an energy exchange, because here comes this energy and then here comes life, right? I don't want to go too deep on the ins and the outs and all that, those aspects. There's a lot in there. But there's an energy exchange, and boundaries are definitely important. I didn't have anything for boundaries for most of my life because of the way that I was raised. And with each level, there's a new devil. And a lot of people hear them be like, oh, they're out there, and then it's like, whoa, hold on, bro. You got those. Those are in the trauma, so what I've found with that is that the boundary is the individual acknowledging the beginning of them acknowledging their value. The evolution of a boundary is a principle and a standard that you live by. And that's what I hear you saying is hey, this is my flow now. This is my standard. If you meet me here, we can move forward. If you don't meet me here, good luck wherever you go. Awesome. No hard feelings. And so every time there's an individual level up or a collective level up, like things are fallen and falling in the system that exists. And, in the last days of any, and I'm not just saying this about one entity, I'm just speaking in general about power structures here on earth that humans agree to. There is a phase where it gets very squeezy before the release. This is another one of these universal principles, right? There's a contraction before the expansion. And when you actually really hit the higher dimensional levels, it's all happening at the same time. It's not so linear like it is here. And so when we look at the collective experience on Earth, there's literal death happening in massive amounts. And then there's also death happening associated with belief structures. So the last year has been really challenging for me and a lot of other people, and, challenging, but also what's a challenge really? It's an opportunity to develop and grow. What's a problem? All of those things are actually opportunities to get to know yourself better and to get to know your relationship with God better. And I would actually flip those two. Get to know your relationship with God the best, and then get to know yourself. In doing those, and not God as the external, but God as the energy that is flowing through all of these vessels. As you said, all one being. It's all connected. And when we're able to get into that space, then when these times come up of death and endings and loved ones and cared for people in community and things not aligning, I'm not going to say it doesn't become triggering. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot wrapped up in it. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of emotional intelligence and information stored in your fascia, stored in your cellular memory that can be a lot to work through. And it's an ongoing initiation, and discernment and boundaries and principles all go together. So the boundaries are the tension signs. They're the, hey, look here. And then the true work, I feel, is what is your principle? What is your standard? And how are you showing up and how are you carrying yourself? And don't think for one moment that that's going to mean that those tire kickers won't come around anymore. It just means that you're going to be in a frequency that they are not there very long. And if they do come up, you catch it way quicker than a year from now or 5 years from now, where it could actually be way worse. It could be life-changing, life-ending. It could be financially draining. And I say that all that has happened to me. All that has happened for me. Let's put it that way. All that has happened for me in my experience in life. And specifically over the last 2 years, there's been a number of scenarios where I've been in a space of building, co-creation, and things have come up for myself and other individuals that are triggering. And, have I been able to be my best self in every scenario? No, I'm never going to say that. Well, let me just say, truthfully, no. How could I say that? Because, the divinity is perfect, and we are remembering that from an imperfect space that we're a piece of that perfection. And so in doing that, in regards to what you shared, and then, my experiences, it's an ongoing process, and it's an ongoing process of discerning what is and what isn't in alignment with your principles and standards.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And again, like the principles, the standards, the values, like as you start to see yourself clearer, as the windshield starts to become clearer, you're going to start seeing things that help the windshield stay clean. And those things will be like core values, there'll be boundaries, there'll be these things that you discern for yourself, help you stay in your power. The reason I stopped doing free calls and free sales calls and things like that was not because I didn't think that if I did thousands of calls, I would make money. Like, I knew it could work, but it came to a point where I was like, that's not what I'm willing to do anymore, because I don't like about 90% of the energy I interact with then. There's, a very amazing opportunity to meet new people. But what I realized was the people that are going to say yes on those calls will say yes, even if it's not a call, because they'll know, because they'll have enough discernment and awareness in themselves that they won't need. I mean, God, I have like, I don't know, probably 700 hours of free podcasts out there. I have this podcast and this one time on psychedelics, plus all the ones I've gone on. I have tons of lead magnets. I do free workshops of the fucking world, right? We just did a summit, had 1,000 people register for it. And it's funny because I have, way over that on my email list. And yet people are all saying, yes, I want transformation. I literally give shit up for free. I should have every single person on my email list raise their hand for it, even if they can't make it live. Watch the recording. What are you here for except evolving, right? If not, why are you on my email list? It's like no harm, no foul, but like, what are you doing here? And so again, like at the end of the day, I'll do my virtuous things of, giving back as much as I can. But when it comes to who I'm going to actually share my individual time with, I only want to be around people that are also big wave surfers, because they inspire me to keep surfing the big wave, because it is scary sometimes. It is hard. It is unknown. It is shocking at times as well. And there's not really a fucking plan for it. Every wave is different. And every micro moment of every day, there's a different wave you're surfing. And every overall day, there's a different wave. Every month, every year, every decade, there's a different overall wave you're surfing. And if you're not around other people that can help you, that are also big wave surfers, and meanwhile, there's just a bunch of people that are just looking to surf, but they're not even getting in the water. They're like, dude, I'd love to do that someday, as they're drinking their beer. I could totally do that. And you're there being like, come out in the water with me. Come on. And they're like, maybe give me like 5 minutes. And you come back 5 minutes later, like, I don't know. Maybe like just give me another 5 minutes. That's the energy of these people, right? And again, I'll actually say it this way. That's the energy of those parts of me that restricted me for years when I was growing up, made me scared to take the leap, made me feel nervous of what if I fail? Who am I going to be? What are people going to think of me? So I have compassion, but I'm no longer going to swim in that field anymore, because there's a point where you have to graduate. Like I can't keep going down there and trying to pull people up, because out of every 100, there's one person. And that person honestly wouldn't need me. Like they're going to be strong enough to find their own way out of there, And so at the end of the day, the same way that, like I said before, like when I had a goal, when I knew I wanted to get closer to Paul Chek, I knew what it fucking would take. I was like, okay, well, I'm a nobody online. I'm not just going to message him on Instagram and expect him to answer and be mad when he doesn't. He's got podcasts out there. It's like, hey, man, you want free shit? Cool. That's where you go. But if you want to work with me, I'm very discerning with my energy, because I got to keep my own energy right to keep changing the world in the way I want to do it. So it's been very interesting to just see how certain parts of me, out into the world that seem like different people, don't sometimes get that. And also, I will say for people out there, typically the less someone pays you, the more frustrating they have the ability to be. It's the people like when I do high ticket stuff, 5K or above, people just got their shit together. They'll ask me, hey, this is what I want to be accountable on. And next week, they'll text me throughout the week. They'll already finish their accountability. We'll create a new accountability. They'll finish that. And then they'll have a whole page of notes when we hop on our call. And it's like, yeah, I get it, because you're someone who can pay $5,000. So you're not a fucking goofball, you're going to make this work. But it's the people that, when I've gifted free stuff to people in the past, because that's something I used to love doing it. If it really felt great, because I'm like, hey, like I want to help you out if I can. But those would be the people that expected everything handed to them. And then they wouldn't go through the process. I would either never hear back from them. Like this will happen a lot. Someone will reach out to me on Instagram. They'll have all these questions. They'll say, oh my God, I really need your help. So I'll sit there and I'll send them 5-10 minutes in voice notes saying, this is exactly what I would suggest. How are you feeling around this? How does this sound? And I'll just never hear back from them. And it's like, what the fuck do I receive from that? So at the end of the day, these are the things I've had to go through. And I think boundaries and this whole topic has been probably the main thing, the most challenging thing that I've had to get clear on. And really what's underneath that, seeing my own value. And that's actually been the hardest thing, is seeing my own value, being able to see myself as this person that can help other people in their lives and whatnot. Because it, again, it's just, I think that for me, when I was a kid, my dad was a little bit cocky. Okay. And so I learned as a kid, like that felt very not okay to me. Like it just felt very cringy to me, and no judgment of my dad. It was just a clear, like, that's not my flavor of ice cream. I don't like that. And so I think I kind of lumped confidence and maybe even charisma into cockiness. And so it's taken me a long time to accept, like, no, I've spent years working on these things. It's okay to accept that I'm good at these things now. Not that I'm the best or I'm perfect or I'll never get it wrong, but that I do know some things about some things, and again, I think that's only come as a result of me setting boundaries and being like, no, I'm not gonna tolerate that kind of energy in my life anymore. I'm not gonna tolerate takers in my life anymore. And so that's something I definitely, like we talked about yesterday, wanted to bring up on the show, because it'll happen, guys, and it'll happen a lot quicker. Like, I didn't know any of this was going to happen. It just literally happened. I went on Aubrey and I knew it was a big show, and I went on Paul and I knew it was a big show, but I didn't know what was about to hit me, which is when you're out there and you're magnetic and you're in your power and you're doing something that is purely from your heart, you light up like a gigantic bug light, and a lot of bugs are going to try to come find you. And I don't mean bugs in a derogatory way. I just mean, like, I'm using an analogy here, okay? And some of those bugs might be awesome. They might be really, like, good bugs. They're not spider mites or root aphids or whatever. They might be good for your plants, right? Beneficial insects, okay? But at the same time, there might be a lot of, not the best insects that want to take a lot more than they give. They want to eat your flowers, not provide, something good for your flowers. They don't want to protect your plants. They want to destroy them. And again, does it make them bad? No, it just means that you have to be aware enough to realize they might not be aware to realize what energy they're in. And again, like, you can have compassion, like you said a little bit a while ago. You can have the compassion and say, hey, I love you, and my door's open if you get your shit together, or if you feel like, if you get out of the addiction you're in, or you stop making very dangerous life choices around me, or you stop trying to waste my energy someday. Okay, we can talk about it. Like, I hold you in high regard, but I cannot have that around me, because it's going to be shooting myself in the foot. And I'm not going to pour my cup out and pour from an empty cup just to try to make it seem like I can help you fill your cup. Because honestly, I can't if I'm pouring from an empty cup, and that would just be irresponsible, So I totally agree, man.
Well, bro, so, and that's part of the discernment is everybody. All it takes is looking around to see that there is a parasitic, narcissistic power structure template on Earth that exploits and feeds and creates misery and suffering. Has there been great growth with it? Yeah. How is that growth
great
as
awareness.
Great as what's right? And is that technological or societal growth as great as previous civilizations that left behind things that we don't even know how to do? No, probably not. But those all ended too. So, it's got to be the darkest before the light. That's how this polarized realm works. Will it always work that way? Probably not. That's the prayer, right? The divine order. For now, though, there is an undoing of this template. And what that means is it's look within. And then when it shows up outside, look within again. Because there's a reason that frequency's showing up. And, a lot of times, you are shining bright light. You're in your heart space. You're in your mission. And there's a part of you that doesn't believe you're supposed to be in that. So it puts out a call to everybody and everything else that feels that they're unworthy. You said something earlier about finding value and, and bringing value. And it's like, it's not always about money. Like, currency is the energy of creation, and money represents it. And how do you know that the principal core of reality is observation and awareness creates reality? Look at the dollar bill. They got prayers and symbols all over the most prevalent piece of currency currently. Don't quote me, but in my perception, one of the most prevalent pieces of currency on Earth has prayers and symbols on it. So the attention and awareness are being placed on that to represent the currency, but it's not actually the currency. It's just something that is a stand-in for it. So when we talk about value, it's about valuing oneself enough that when things show up in reality that feel out of alignment, to look inside before externalizing it all. And, Ryan is definitely out on the front lines in that way. He is somebody who puts a lot of time, effort, and energy into creating spaces where people can connect with themselves, connect with others, connect with people that are walking the journey. And in doing that and bringing community together, the village template was intentionally broken here on Earth. There are still lineages that keep it together. And the majority of Earth, especially this experiment of quote unquote America on Turtle Island, is violently bring people here, whether against their will or force them here through war and famine, and come here and lose their identity and their connection to their indigenous, interfamilial, intergenerational ways. The DNA communicates. The DNA is in water and it reacts to light and sound. When you think of, and it stores information, it's essentially the source code. The human is the original biologic quantum supercomputer on Earth, and it transmits and it receives codes through light and sound and structures in the DNA in the water. So when we get that into perspective, when we look at the template of the village, for millennia, for many generations, there were generations of families in close proximity with each other, with their DNA communicating with each other. So it was very strong, and there were principles and standards embedded in that genetic information. But now that this template has taken people out, this parasitic narcissistic overlay has taken people out of the village template, that familiarity, those principles and standards have been broken, and these other trauma-induced values or standards of this parasitic society have been imprinted on the human genetic structure. So when we come back into community, this is the work. The work is, are you able to bring the value of your worthiness into this shared space so collectively we can offer value for this? And, it's not just about offering value. The value is really in, are we making our lives better? If we're making our lives better, exactly. If we're making our lives better in a loving way, then that's going to reflect outwards. And, that's a whole thing to say when you can look at the world and what's happening in certain areas. And I have compassion and prayers and whatever I can do to help in those areas. And I also know that even if I was on the ground in that area, I'm not going to be able to make that much impact. But the impact, especially if I'm going there angry and resistant and wanting to fight, and and so in that, and I'm not saying this is the truth, I'm just saying this is what I've come to, is that coming back together and being willing to look within and look outside and not take offense, but instead, take accountability, take action. That's what shifts things. And behind the scenes, so everybody on the podcast, I'm sure, is very familiar with Ryan, what he does. And behind the scenes, we've been building things as far as how, and talking and strategizing at high levels, and how to bring people together to help facilitate this paradigm change of the holy shift. And essentially, how do we onboard people into this? And in my experience in the past, it's like, build physical community. It's like, yes, at the right time. Is it? Am I ready for it yet? No. I mean, no. I'm still in certain ways. Yeah, we can come together in a retreat. We can come together at Sheila Jam. Can we all live in the same place 24/7 and deal with the food, the water, and the bills and all that? Probably not, because we haven't been in those relations. Yeah, as housemates, sure, for a time. And so, we've been building behind the scenes a lot of things to help facilitate this shift. And there's entry points around the space. And then also it's about bringing together people who are walking that way. And for anybody out there who's in their mission, learning their mission, knowing they have a mission to step into, one of the things that we've all talked about is, how do we create a system that people can get into and find their area they want to move into and have a support structure there? My relationship with social media right now is one of pretty much standoffishness. I use it. I look at it sometimes. I post very rarely because it's inauthentic. There is a centralized structure that is dictating what is shared or received. And so for me, what I see as a key right now is genuine, authentic connection in places that are stewarded by people that are actually doing the thing. Because if you go on social media, Facebook or Instagram, those corporations are not doing the spiritual stuff. They are not doing that. And yet the whole spiritual community is on there. right? Maybe not the whole, but a lot of the spiritual communities on there. So co-creating these spaces where we can come together in sanctuary, in education, empowerment, and embodiment, and really just like personal accountability for how are we coming back together. And again, all of this has been done, okay? There's nothing new under the sun. We are not reinventing the wheel. We can look to the lineages of people that are still connected on the land they're from, to the people that they've been in relations with. And look at what's happening around the world. Anywhere those places exist, there is an effort to eradicate them. You can look here at Turtle Island. You can look in Gaza. You can look in the Amazon. You can look in what happened. I won't go into that, but you can look in a lot of places where there's indigenous wisdom and knowledge, and that's attempted to be eradicated through means that could be considered genocide. And also not just beyond the ending of life, but the ending of ways. And there's a word I've heard. It's not my word. It's not my teaching. I'll share it. I recommend everybody go tap in with, if you hear a teaching from an indigenous way, go learn from that indigenous way before talking about it, sharing it. There's a term out there called wetiko. I don't know where that comes from. I've tried to do the research. It looks like it comes from a guy who wrote a book that says it's a native word,
Paul
but
Levy.
I haven't ever. Yeah, I don't know what native tribe that's from. I do know of a word that's I feel very fitting, and it's something I've heard from in the way of the Lakota people. It's washichu, and it means fat taker. It means the one that would kill the buffalo and only take the best part and leave everything else to rot. And so when we look at that perception, the tire kickers, the parts of self that have chosen to identify with this victim, what about me mentality, really that at the core is separation. These people would take the best part of the buffalo and not honor its life and leave it to rot. There's a hide there. There's way more meat there. There's so many resources offered by that. So there's a separation, because to only take the best of something and leave it in a bad way, that's like, I'm not even a part of that. I don't even care about that. And so coming back into this space of how are we co-creating together? What rails, what agreements, what guideways do we have? Because it's not going to be perfect. You know that. I know that from the communities that we've been in and the communities that we've stewarded. Shit comes up. And to think it won't is extremely naive. And to think it won't, and when it does, to just go play more medicine music or do more breath work is bypassing it the worst. The realest thing is to ground into reality what we've learned about the spiritual, but in a way that's like, hey, I'm not living on Mars 9 with the Arcturian star shield of galactic infinite. It's like, great, but how's that look in your real life? Like, are you still living in a house? Are you still drinking your water? Are you still going to the bathroom? Then what are you really? Are you really this Arcturian star shield planet 9? Sure, but how is that relating to what you're doing here on Earth? And so just getting really clear that like we don't need to externalize our connection points to something outside of us. The real thing is coming together with knowing that creation is in us and as us, and in doing that, coming together in ways of acknowledgement of, hey, this is where things haven't been working. So how could we get together and train up on mindset, train up on emotional resilience, train up on sovereignty, train up on commerce, train up on law, train up on Web3, train up on crypto, train up on regenerative structures, train up on regenerative growing, train up on building community, on buying land, because all of these things are necessary to know how to do to move forward as free beings. If we don't know the rules of the game, we can't even play the game. And these rules, a lot of people, including myself, get tripped up in the beginning of, oh, destroy it all. They're operating on basically the rules of the place, and they've just hidden them. And so when you can see that, and the term occult is occulting or to hide, right? when somebody is able to see that, then they say, okay, maybe the image of the pyramid with the eye of providence above it isn't evil and only represents the Illuminati. Maybe what the Freemasons have become is not what they started as. Maybe the system of the Constitution is based, from what I've learned, on the Haudenosaunee great book of law of peace, or at least a lot of it. Were those dudes slave owners? Yep. Some of them were. So, is that Constitution free of any tinge? No. But are there things in that are accurate? Yeah. And you can look at any holy book, you can look at any holy text. And the thing is finding the pieces that are actually bringing us back to that heart space of love, where it's, radical acceptance, radical accountability, and radical surrender.
Yeah. 100%, dude. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like I always say, and I love how Disappearance talks about this. It's like, hey, any path will get you home. Okay. The only wrong path, to put a duality term on it, is the one that tells you there's only one way to get there. So for instance, right, if someone starts in Freemasonry because they think it's really cool, let's say, right? And then they start to become aware, like, yikes, maybe this isn't where I parked my car. Well, they probably learned some things in Freemasonry that are from love, like getting together, supporting each other. There's always some threads of good within anything, right? And again, good would imply duality, but you guys get where I'm talking about with this. But, again, at the end of the day, discernment is the ultimate muscle here. Because again, like I had to realize when I was getting those tire kickers or allowing the whole world to access me, I wasn't a victim. I allowed that, but I didn't know. I didn't know before that. So I had an opportunity in disguise to realize how important that was so I could teach other people about it. And maybe other people will have to go through it too. That's okay, right? But maybe one person is aware of this and at least creates a little bit more of a boundary before they put themselves out there, right? And so at the end of the day, I'm just very grateful to have people like you in my life that can remind me when I forget, and that I can help remember and remind when they forget. And that's what we all do for each other, right? Life is just one big series of remembering all of these truths or forgetting them and falling into the world of ego. And so really the goal is, can you do things every day? Can you live in places or visit places? Can you do things, and can you be around people and with people that help you remember more and forget less? And if you can do that, then do your best, forget the rest, and you'll get there. And it doesn't matter when, because time is an illusion. But part of like my excitement of being in the world, and also part of my human design, being a projector, is to make life more efficient. So I think a lot of what I'm doing, and a lot of like, I imagine you probably have a similar design, a lot of the reason I'm getting into all these very new things like crypto, decentralization, I'm always trying to find the curb before it hits, is because I can see the world is very inefficient. Like, for instance, needing to work 40 something years to collect enough to retire and make like a grand a week. I'm like, that is insanely inefficient. Why are people spending their whole life doing that? But a lot of people don't see it that way. They might be fine with it. And that might be perfect for their evolution. So I'm not saying this is stupid all around. I'm saying for me, that feels stupid. So I'm not going to do it that way. And maybe there are other people that can benefit from what I find the same way that I benefit from things other people find. Like yourself. I mean, you got me into crypto. You got me into a lot of the things that have made my life more efficient over the last 3 years. And so if we can all get together and help each other do that, whatever that thing is for us that makes us light up inside, then really it's only a question of when, and time's an illusion anyway. So we win. So bro, this has been amazing, dude. I would keep talking to you all freaking day. Where can people go to connect with you? I think you might have a lead magnet that you're throwing in the show notes. If you're going to throw that in the show notes, let me know and just state it here and I'll make sure everyone goes to the show notes. But where can people connect with you, my man? In final words do you want people to know? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just, firstly, thanks, bro. Thanks for being you.
Dude.
I really have a lot of appreciation and gratitude for being in relations the way we are, what we've done so far and what we're continuing to do. Yeah, and anybody looking to check anything out, go to rainbowbridgeacademy.com. It's a PMA gated website. PMA is Private Membership Association. When you sign up for that, read through it, you can, it takes us out of public jurisdiction. So then we're in the private conducting with each other. And anybody who signs up, you'll see all the terms, everything is written in there. Pro tip, one could copy and paste and have their own version of a PMA. Just putting that out there. Just, remove
Food
any
for thought.
information before running through any AI. So it's a PMA gated website. And so once you do that, you're in, and we behind the scenes, we've been working on a schoolroom, a community, an educational community, and it's going to launch in September. It's in pre-launch right now. There's information up on the site about it. There's going to be a link you can click through for Ryan. And, the goal with that is to create a platform where a bunch of people are coming together who have been walking their mission. We have modules and workshops there's a 4-part module up there now around Web3. There's going to be more stuff, and it's going to be beyond Web3, right? We're talking about, we want to bring people in and find out, where is their focus? Is it in Web3? Is it in trust? Is it in breath work? Is it in conscious parenting? Is it in mindset? Is it in business? And have avenues for these people to walk into, learn, and build with others that are in that way. And so that's going to launch in September. So the information will be there. And there's a lead magnet too. There's a free ebook I wrote. So I know, technically speaking, according to any of the business marketing people out there, you say one thing that you have, but I'm a multifaceted, multidimensional being. And so the first thing is just go to rainbowbridgeacademy.com, get in with the PMA, and then you'll be on an email list and you can check out the info about the school. I think it's going to be set up so we're going to cap the school at some point, probably at like 400 people. So it's $44 a month right now in the pre-launch, and that's only good for like the first 100 people. And then it's going to go up by like 20% or something with each one until we top out. So really just looking, because the school is an entry point. I'm not going to talk about it here. We've talked about it in some other podcasts, but there are other organizations in areas that we work in that this leads into. But this is kind of like, because we're vetting. At this point, we're vetting. Yeah, exactly. We're looking for people that are able to, who can do the tier 1 healing work and step forward as a tier 1 operator. And I'm not talking about those military special ops dudes. I'm talking about, being a special op for the divine here, and not the ops, but an operational asset. So somebody who's actually here in their value, able to move forward. So and the goal is, my bro has said this to me a bunch, and it's just something I've heard from others, and I think this is part of the medicine now is, this new version of Earth is not about competition. It's about collaboration and co-creation. And in order to be in that in a good way, you got to vet each other. You got to make sure that that person I'm standing next to is going to be able to stand through the fire with me. Because if they're not, then I'm the one that's going to get burned up. So,
because I'm choosing to stay in the fire.
Exactly.
We're choosing to go through the fire. Yeah.
Right. And so walking with someone like Ryan and the other people that we've been working with for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, like, it's good people. And way to tap in with that is at rainbowbridgeacademy.com.
Dude, I love it, man. And it's so true. Like, guys, I'm not trying to do shiny object syndrome here, but trust me, there is a lot of amazing stuff that we talk about in the higher levels of what Amethyst does. And it's just honestly not responsible to let the everyday person understand that information, or hear it rather, because they won't understand it. And they'll try to go take quick action because they see shiny objects like free cars, discharge a house. Like, they'll see all these things. They won't discern enough and learn enough about that before they go try to do it. And they can get themselves in some real trouble. And so at the end of the day, that's why Amethyst goes through this vetting process. That's why I go through the same thing, right? A lot of my lower ticket stuff is amazing. I love it. But also, like, there's usually a few people that I'm like, wow, like, you're awesome. Maybe they reach out to me one-on-one and we became really close. My buddy Dave Ray that reached out to me on Instagram a couple of years ago and was like, hey, I want this life that you're talking about. And he really fucking did it, dude. He showed up. Shout out to Dave, if he's listening to this, but shout out to Dave. He really fucking showed up. And I invited them out to a get together about a year ago now with some of my homies. And he said yes. And I had done this to many people that I have worked with, that I've really felt a connection with. Been like, hey, why don't you come check out what we're doing, when we get together? And he was like, all right. And literally, he's one of the favorite people in the group now. Like, everyone's like, where'd you find this kid? I'm like, he just reached out to me on Instagram. But I can tell he's got the drive, He reached out knowing, hey, I have some blind spots. I'm aware that I have them, but I'm not sure what they are. and I believe you can help me. And so, boom, a year later, his whole life is different, but he did it. I didn't really do anything. I just asked him good questions. I held him accountable, and I believed in the version of him that he was becoming more than maybe he was aware of the version he was becoming at the time, because I could see it. And I held him to that standard, and he rose to meet that standard. So, again, that's why I love hanging out with you so much, man, because you're the exact same way. People you got in your DAO, the people I have in my communities, like, that's what it's all about is, hey, at this point, I want to really help people win. And in order to win, you got to take accountability. You got to be authentic. It's just, you really have to. And so at the end of the day, if you're not willing to do that, it's okay. It's no big deal. I spent much of my life in that area too, but we don't have time for that right now because we're too focused on what we're doing and who's going to come with us, So again, at the end of the day, sometimes hard truths are the best truths, and maybe someone listening to this feels triggered. Well, look into that. Okay. Look into it. See what's happening. What do you believe about yourself that we poked and prodded today? Maybe on the other side, you're feeling super empowered. Awesome. Reach out to Amethyst, right? Go reach out to them. Get these results for yourself because life's not an observation sport. So Amethyst, thanks for coming on, bro. I got one last question for you, super quick, which is, let's say someone listens to this episode and they really want to highly optimize their life starting tomorrow. What is the one piece of advice you would give them to allow them to start highly optimizing their life?
It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yes. Fuck yes. I love that. I love that, dude. Because you know what it brings up for me? It's like, for a lot of people, and this is why, and I'll make this quick, but for a lot of people, especially in the healing space, they're kind of told, like, go back to these times, connect with the little version of you, see these things happening. And I'm not saying any of that is bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It can help a lot of people. But what it does also, a lot of the time, is it gets people to go back, not come back. And so then they get too identified with what happened, when in reality, it didn't actually happen, right? If we're thinking about A Course in Miracles point of view, which not everyone has to believe, but it's what I believe, it didn't really happen. And if it did happen, I choose to take on the belief system that if it happened, it must have been meant for me, as weird or fucked up as it was. And so now it might not have been my fault that I was too young to understand what was happening at that age or whatever. But now as an adult, no one's going to come save me. So it's up to me and me alone. So the part of it gets to be my responsibility. Might sound harsh if someone out there is still in a victim state. But when you realize that only you are going to save you, then the number one thing that's going to allow that to either happen or not happen is whether or not you take responsibility. So I love that, man, because it really is the crux where everything else becomes possible. Because if you know that you can take an event that happened in the past that was neutral, that maybe you put a negative mindset on, and you can switch it to a positive one, well, guess what happens the next time that happens? You know that you're the one that switched it last time. So you're the only one that can do it. And you start to become very empowered in doing that. I've worked with people that have had horrible, horrible things happen in their life. Things that I would never wish on anyone. Things that are very brutal. And at the same time, no matter how brutal they are, no matter how fucked up they are, no matter how much I get angry hearing these things that have happened to these people, right, or for these people, their ability to take ownership over them is the number one differentiating factor to whether or not they end up addicted to drugs and alcohol and just coulda, shoulda, woulda land, or end up rising and being a TEDx speaker, let's say, and empowering people with the story. Otherwise, it's very challenging. It's the same story, it's just a different perspective. So I really appreciate that, man. Guys, please go make sure you check out Amethyst's website, download that free ebook, okay? I'm telling you guys, like we said today, if you want different results in your life, you have to try something different. I know it can be challenging, but at the same time, we're all here with you doing it, all right? And friends that rise together, stay together. So guys, go check that out. If you haven't given the show a 5-star review and you feel it deserves one, we'd love you to go do that. It helps us keep finding more and more amazing people just like yourself. And guys, I love you guys. I hope you're having the best day ever. As always, may the source be with you. And until next time, ladies and gents, peace for now. Bye.